Melissa, and I am so excited to have you here for another episode, and I am actually kicking it solo again today. I'm trying to kind of make sure that I get a couple of these in here and there, in addition to scheduling my other co-hosts and guests and everything, because I think it's important to also kind of like touch base on things on my own and have my audience get to know me a little bit more, as a lot of my episodes are based on interviewing somebody else. So if you're new here, Lila is not my name. My name is not Lila or Lila. That is the name of my brand, which is a blog, podcast, and events, and I hope to build a community in this way. And the reason it's called Lila, which is a question I get a lot, and that's super, super fair because it does look like a name. It is a color in a name, a word in German. I do not speak German. It is just Lila in English. So Lila is all about talking about and recognizing and putting special importance on the moments that make us feel like what life is worth living, with recognition of the times that it doesn't and how it got you to those moments. And so basically, I kept having this feeling throughout my life that made me feel like, okay, this is what life is all about. This is what makes life worth living. And Lila is defined as a wholehearted contentedness upon the recognition that every happenstance in one's life thus far has led to this very moment in this very place with these very people. It contains warmth, genuine happiness in the moment, and I feel it a lot when I'm like in a room full of the people that I love most, just laughing or really having a great conversation, and just thinking, this is what life is all about. It's about connection. It's about being like, you know what? There were things in the past that were really hard, but I wouldn't have what I have now in this moment if those things didn't happen. So that is recognizing these moments that are so life-giving, with recognition that we wouldn't have them without the ones that felt like life draining, like life wasn't worth living. And I have been very open about the fact that a lot of that stems from my struggles with mental illness and trying to prioritize mental health and cope with it in different ways, and sharing my experience, because when I was going through the hardest times, just knowing someone else's story could have made the world of a difference in feeling like I could get through it. And so that's why I like to share that. That's why we talk about mental health. That's why we talk about solo travel and travel in general, because that was something that really helped me get out of my mental illness struggles. Not to say that I don't have them anymore. I'm just better coping and also medicated. But with that being said, a big part that this brand is built off of is solo travel. And that's something that I wanted to talk about solo, because it really is something that I have done by myself, done alone. And I won't say that I didn't have help from anybody else. I won't say that I didn't have support from anyone else. I think it would be really, really hard to do what I've done without support of my family. Like, my family has always been encouraging and supportive. And like, my dad has always been like, you know, you can stay with me between your adventures and all of that stuff. So I definitely recognize that even though I do travel solo, it's not something that could be done solely by myself, without the support, without all of these other things that help make it possible for me to go on these adventures. And I definitely want to recognize that too. So a lot of times when you travel solo, there can be different reactions that you get. People can either be like, oh my God, you went alone? That's crazy. Like, I could never do that. Or they're like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I could do that. Or they're like, oh my God, yeah, sweet. I solo travel too. So you get kind of a range of answers, and there's a different reaction or response to all of them. But I kind of want to address some of those things, because I want to talk about getting through some of those questions that people might have, for the ones that really want to do it, or for the people that don't understand why you would do it, and maybe just something to relate to for the people that do already do it. So first, my solo traveling, how I got into it, why I do it, because I never would have thought that it was something that I could have done or would have been into. And somehow I just kind of landed in that. But I think that I can't talk about that without talking about how my mental health led me here. And I have talked about this in previous episodes and in different blog posts and such, but I really was in a low place and feeling like not understanding the meaning of life, not wanting what I saw laid out in front of me. I grew up in the suburbs in America, and I just felt like there had to be more to life than this. And so once I saw that there are different destinations and lots of traveling and like places all over the world that are completely different from my life, I thought, oh my God, like I can't believe that exists in the same world. And that gave me a lot of like hope to see the world. And now I have to give a lot of credit to my sister, my older sister. She's 5 years older than me, and she kind of showed me that it was possible. Like, it didn't have to just be a faraway dream. You know, I used to be on my Tumblr, on my Pinterest, looking at pictures of Bora Bora and being like, haha, that will never happen. Versus now, 10 years later, I'm like, oh, sweet, I can't wait to go to Bora Bora one day because I know I'll make it happen. I know that it's possible. And I have to say that my sister Tabitha really kind of opened that door and opened my eyes to that, because she studied abroad in Australia and she was super excited about it. She did a lot of travel there, and it was something that I didn't know was an option. I didn't even think about. And then once, she's 5 years older than me, so then once I got to college, I really knew that I wanted to study abroad one semester. And so that was something that I don't know if I would have taken seriously or would have made time in my schedule over the 4 years of college had she not done that and shown me, like, it's really cool. You get to go study somewhere else and make all these friends and everything and see the world. And so that was something that really sparked that for me. And I, at that point, was still like, yeah, but it'll be better because it'll be through the school. I'll like live with people. You can make friends through your classes, everything like that. And then I intended to travel, and she, after she graduated college, decided that she was going to go to Costa Rica for 3 months and backpack by herself. And that was the first time I ever heard of somebody solo traveling, really, like that. Like packing up your backpack, going and staying in hostels by yourself and trekking around for a few months in a foreign country. And I remember when she said she was going to do that, like my jaw fell to the floor, and I was like, you're kidding? You're actually going to do that? Like, that's crazy. And I remember talking with my family, and we were like, oh my gosh, she's just going to go do that. But Tabitha has always been kind of wild and free, whatever, especially in her college years. And so it wasn't like the most surprising thing out of character, but it was something that I had never heard of or seen anyone do, especially as a woman. And so that really showed me that that was something that you could do. And so then when I did go to study abroad, I actually went to Europe. So I studied in Italy, which is one of the places that like I had always wanted to go. And I actually did get sent home early because I went 2020. So that kind of didn't entirely work out. However, it did spark that inspiration in me to go back out and travel because I got sent home early, and I was like, I have to prioritize coming back. And so my goal when I went to study abroad was I thought it would be so cool if I was able to go do a day trip by myself or go do a weekend trip by myself. And mind you, at this point, this is 2020, so this is 4 years ago. At that point, when I first got to Italy, to my apartment there, I was scared to like go out by myself. Like I always wanted to be with one of my roommates for the first at least week I was there, until of course like I had to go start classes, and you just have to grow up and be an adult. But I really didn't have any experience with traveling out of the country, especially by myself. And so that was like my first introduction into like, oh, this is like travel, this is world, this is walking around and everyone around you is speaking a different language, and just getting comfortable, getting used to that instead of panicking. And I remember my anxiety was out of freaking control my first night in Italy. And that was something that I think, you know, I'm not necessarily saying like exposure or like throwing yourself into things that will make you more anxious is what can help you get over it. But I do really feel like traveling, seeing the world, like having to cope with things and having no other choice but to calm myself down because all I have is me, and like freaking out won't help. I feel like that helped me calm my anxiety at home so much more. And not to say that's completely eradicated, I will say that I'm medicated. However, that was something that I was really able to learn how to calm myself with. And I did eventually start going, or I went on my first solo day trip to Bologna, which is maybe an hour train ride from Florence, I think. And I was so proud of myself for being able to get off on the right stop, figuring it all out by myself, planning what to do for a day for myself, going and sitting at a restaurant by myself. That was my goal, to like be able to sit at a restaurant, not look at my phone, and just enjoy. And I think that's something that everybody needs to be able to do. I think it's a lot hard. I don't know that I would even do it back home, but I think it's like something that everybody should do and try to get comfortable with. And that's something that solo travel can teach you, because if you aren't willing to eat alone, then you're not going to eat, and you need to be able to eat. And so definitely like the first few days of my first big solo travel trip, I would just like get takeaway or grab and go or something. Even that was scary because I was like, I don't know how different restaurants work. Like, do they have a host? You just seat yourself, all this stuff, which is stuff that you don't overthink when you're in your home country, but when you're somewhere else and there's a language barrier, it is something you think about. So anyway, once I got sent home from there, we were all like, oh my gosh, we'll come back, blah, 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 because there were so many trips that we had planned or places we were going to go that obviously we weren't going to be able to do anymore at that time. And I was like, well, I'm still doing it. Like, just because it's not happening in the next 4 months doesn't mean it's never happening. And so after I graduated college, the end of college was really awful for me, like I've said. And I do think that I'll get more into that story at some point, but not today. And so really, I was so exhausted and drained and just needed to rebuild my life after the end of college. And so that's when I decided to go on my first big solo backpacking trip. I went to Europe, and it was supposed to be for 6 weeks, but I ended up extending and doing 8, even though I made it a flexible flight because I thought I might want to come home early. And then since then, after that, I moved to Hawaii by myself for 6 months, did a work exchange, and then I went to Southeast Asia for 4 months, and now I am actually working on planning the next adventure. I've been back home in Minnesota. That's where I'm from, born and raised. And actually, when I'm recording this episode, I'm in Door County, Wisconsin, which if you haven't heard about, it's kind of a vacation destination of the Midwest. I actually do want to do an episode about it because for people that don't know about it, you're completely underrating and missing out. It's somewhere that I grew up going with my family every other year, every few years. And so it's just such a homey place that we love to return to. And if you do go there, then I feel like a special connection to you because I'm like, oh my God, you go to Door County, you get it. Because growing up, I was always like, seriously, you guys, Mom, Dad, can we go to Mexico or something? Like, why do we go to the same place all the time? And now that I'm older, I just appreciate it and recognize it so much more. And so yeah, so that's where I am right now. I wasn't going to maybe do an episode this week. And then I was like, nope, you need to be consistent, you need to show up every week. So super excited to talk about So You Want to Solo Travel. This episode is for people that are solo travel curious and just kind of diving into some of those things that I usually hear from people and how I was able to kind of get past it, or the things that you don't see behind the scenes or underneath the surface. So reservations that I often hear from people are, don't you get scared about being in another country alone? Or I have anxiety, I can't do it. Or don't you get lonely? Or I don't think I'd have fun by myself. Or it's too expensive, I can't afford it. So I'm going to go through each one of these and kind of almost debunk them or kind of explain my rationale, my thinking, how I would respond to each one of those, because I think it's so easy to get stuck in our heads and be like, that's super cool, I could never do that. But I want to encourage you and help you to believe that actually, yes, you can do that. So first one, don't you get scared about being in another country alone? Yes. Yes, I'm human, of course. Yes, and I'm a woman, and that's scary. But that fear wears off. Now, I will say, the week leading up to my trip, I usually get pretty overwhelmed and anxious just because I feel like I have so much to do before I leave the country for a long time, and to make sure that I'm prepped to be by myself for the foreseeable future, trying to see everybody last minute, trying to make sure all my affairs are in order, everything. So I do get pretty anxious during that time. And then when I'm on the way to the airport, for some reason, it is always the quickest ride to the airport it has ever been. And I'm usually pretty anxious, and it's tough to usually it's my dad who drops me off. So it's really tough to walk away from my dad and be like, great, I'm not going to hug you again for the foreseeable future. But once I get into my groove, once I get checked in, I'm at my gate, I just get excited, and I trust my gut, and I feel like I've trusted my gut. This is what I've meant to do. Solo travel has taught me a confidence in myself and my decisions and trusting my gut that is honestly incomparable. Solo travel has taught me that in such a specific way. And I feel so grateful for that because, part of it is through my own growth and really making a conscious effort towards that. But part of it is just the nature of it and how you will get thrown into things and just have to trust yourself and make the best rational decision. And you don't really have anyone to bounce things off of unless, meet people and travel with them. But we're assuming that you're traveling by yourself. Another thing about it is that yes, it's scary to be in another country alone. It can be really intimidating to walk around and just hear everybody speaking a language you don't know and feel like, oh my God, I don't know the societal rules here. I don't know the traffic laws. I don't know this or that. I don't know when I can cross, when I can't, all that stuff. But one thing that you learn to see is that we actually have a lot in common with somebody from the other side of the world. We can be raised completely differently, different religion, different language, different climates, but the one common denominator that we have is humanity. People feel pain, they feel love, they feel fear. They put their pants on one foot at a time, one leg at a time, and that's what we have in common. They know what it's like to be fearful, to be scared, to feel love, to love somebody else. And when you see that in other people, another thing is that in general, I like to believe that people are good. So while I do have my guard up a bit, as I think is smart, in general, we have a lot in common and people are good. And when I look around at these people walking around me on the street, I can know that we all share something in common. And if I really need help, there's somebody out there, they have a good and caring heart and they'll help me. And that's what I found so many places all along the way. People have been so willing to help me in different ways while I travel solo. And I also, another thing is that I prepare and that kind of helps relieve some of the scaredness. And so that kind of gets me onto my next point, which is I have anxiety. I can't do it. And I'll speak on my own personal experience. I can't speak for anyone else, but solo traveling has actually made my anxiety so much lower, which is like sounds so backwards to say, and I know that, but it's actually, I feel like because I have known what it's like to be on the side of the road in a foreign country in the middle of the night, needing to figure something out, and I've got myself to safety and figured it out, that like when I'm at home, walking into the grocery store, I'm like, why would I be anxious about that? You know, and I know that there's an element to anxiety that's like, I don't know why I feel so nervous right now. I just do. Or I don't want to feel this worked up about this, but I just do. And I totally get that. And that brings me to I'm also medicated. But medication only takes you so far, you know, and I don't have like the highest doses of them by any means. And so a lot of it is also brain work. The way that I view medication for my mental illnesses is that it gets me to the point where I can do the work, because without it, I am like feel so hopeless or like so too deep to even start trying to do the work to repair or cope. But the medications give me that like baseline to be able to do that. It doesn't mean I don't ever feel depression or sadness. It doesn't mean that I don't ever feel anxious or nervous. It just means that it's giving me that baseline to be able to learn how to cope with that and make it a less smaller scale, you know? And so I do get anxious when I'm traveling solo in the beginning. And then, and when I get sick, that's pretty tough because it's just, you know, usually when I'm at home, somebody can get something for me. And when you're in a foreign country, you're like, oh, well, I'm deathly ill. But if I don't eat or drink, then I will only stay sick. But I also feel so sick, I don't think I can do those things. And, you know, you're just more capable than you think that you are. And that's something that I've definitely learned through solo travel. So I would say, as somebody who does have anxiety, I don't think that is a reason for you to not be able to do it. I'm not saying like, oh, it's fine, you won't get anxious, you'll be fine, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that at all. You know, you have to assess that for yourself, but don't cut yourself short. Like, don't miss out on opportunities just because you think you won't be able to do it. Like, it actually might end up really healing you in certain ways. Like, I found that it healed me in a lot of ways. I just learned to trust myself so much more and trust that everything works out and that it'll be okay. And that has really, really helped my anxiety a lot too. Now, the next one is, don't you get lonely? Sometimes, yeah. And it's lonely in different ways. It's actually crazy because my first solo trip, I actually had to book a hotel room a month in because I needed to get some alone time. And now that's partially because the way that I travel is I stay in hostels. And so it's kind of basically like going back to college, living in a big dorm, except for it's all fun and party and seeing the world and travel and no studying. It's the best thing ever. Like, seriously, you need to be staying in hostels. And I will die on that hill. And so that is how I usually make all of my friends. Like, yeah, sure, I've made some friends on like transportation or things like that, but really, really hostels is your way to go. And that's another thing, is that you do have to be willing to just go up to people and be like, hey, I'm Alexa, what's your name? Or, hey, like, can I join you guys today? Or what do you guys got going on today? I mean, you probably want to make a little conversation before you ask if you can spend the next 12 hours with them. But truthfully, you don't have to make that much conversation. I mean, people are pretty open, and, you know, a lot of people are solo travelers, so there's not really much exclusiveness or anything like that, unless you've like really truly offended somebody or you just don't mesh. But I mean, everybody's kind of on their own, so nobody's really exclusive. At least that's been my experience, and maybe that would be different for other people. Or sometimes, I've met people that I just don't click with, and that's okay. And that's another thing that I've learned to be so much more okay with being back home, is that I'm like, oh, there's not something wrong with me. I'm just not maybe clicking with everybody in this group, and that's fine. Like, I have plenty of people all around the world that I do click with. It doesn't mean that I'm not lovable. It doesn't mean that I'm not somebody that people want to be friends with or spend time with. It just means that me and this person, we don't jive, and that is okay. And that's something that I've been so much more willing to be okay with since traveling solo and meeting so many people all the time, is just being like, we don't really click, and that's fine, and we don't have to. And then I'm so much more okay with that actually when I'm back home. So solo travel has helped my mental health so much back home as well, which is like so crazy, something that I didn't see coming when I started to do that. So yes, I feel like the loneliness doesn't come from being physically alone so much, just because I usually do put myself in situations where I can be surrounded by people. However, I do feel like I will get lonely for people back home, like people that really know me, the people that it doesn't really take much effort to be around. And I will say that you might meet some people that you feel that way when you're traveling, but it is a different loneliness. It's like, I'm lonely for home and the feeling of people really knowing me. I'm lonely for specific people, but not lonely because I feel like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to another soul in a month. It's different. And I think that you can control that to a certain degree. Now, the next one, I don't think that I'd have fun. Okay, maybe not. I'm somebody that really loves my alone time. I think that I am great company. I love hanging out with myself on a Friday night, and that's just the way that I am. I've learned to really be okay with alone time, and that's how I recharge. But another thing is that you also, again, leading back to the back point, don't have to be alone. Like, it's insane the amount of people that you'll meet if you're staying in hostels, and even just like doing guided tours and everything like that. And so I do think that like things are what you make of it. If you're willing to make the best of it, and like, you're open to meeting new people and hearing about their lives and enjoying something, and you have to be okay with being able to enjoy things alone. And definitely there's some things that I'll be like, oh, I wish that, my dad was here to see this with me. I wish my best friend was here. She would love this. And that's another way that I feel like I'm able to connect with home, is I message them when something like that happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you would love to be here. And that's a way that you can still connect with people back home, even when you're feeling lonesome for them, is being like, oh my gosh, you would have loved this today. Let me tell you all about it. And they'll probably love to hear it too. And so that's another way to like keep connecting with home and help you from feeling lonely for them, is leaning into it in a way. And I think that, yes, it's about mindset. Like, I've met plenty of people that are big time complainers, very negative. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably not going to have much fun. Whereas me, I usually really try to look at the bright side of things and like make the best of any situation, see like kind of trials and stuff like that as funny and hilarious. For example, when I got super, super sick on a travel day, and we were taking a ferry. Luckily, I had some friends that I had been traveling with for a couple of weeks. We met each other, and so they helped me carry my backpack and stuff, or held our space in line for the ferry. But we were taking a ferry to another island, and I just got deathly sick. And so luckily there was a toilet on the ferry, but they would be kind of full, or just, it was really, really hot in there, and like you'd come out drenched in sweat. And I started throwing up out the ferry window. Sorry, trigger if that bothers you, and my friend, one of my friends that I had met, was just like laughing, and he's like, I'm so sorry to be laughing at you, but this is hilarious. And I was laughing too. I was like, no, this is hilarious. Like, of course I get food poisoning on a travel day. Of course both the bathrooms are full and I can't hold it and I have to throw up out the ferry window. Like, of course this is happening. And you just have to be like, this is hilarious because it is the worst thing that could happen. It is so ironic. Now, I probably wouldn't think it's as funny if I was straight up alone, which I have been very, very, very incredibly sick when I'm alone. And that's not funny. And that does make me want to go home. But I will tell you that you can push through it. You really can. And honestly, front desks of hotels and everything, that will help you if you are super sick. That is one thing that I will advise. Don't be sick in a hostel. Anytime I start to feel something coming on, I've gotten food poisoning plenty of times now that I've been traveling. It's just something you have to be okay with happening. There are a lot of like tips and tricks, like charcoal tablets and things like that. You just have to expect that it'll happen and be okay with it. But one thing I will say, the second I start feeling off, I book myself a hotel and I go there and I'm like, yep, this is where I will be until I'm better. And that's okay. I'm going to spend a little bit more and that's fine, but I need to recharge. I need to recover. I need to be able to sleep on the cold bathroom floor if I need to. I need to be able to, lay over in bed with a bucket in front of me, not worry about getting other people sick. And a lot of times the front desk of a hotel, they'll want to help you out if you let them know, like, hey, I'm really, really sick. Can I please get some water to my room? Can I please? And you got to be willing to eat some charges too, and it depends where you are. Like I've stayed in some pretty bad hotels too, but until you're better enough to get through it. And so just, you will get through, you will see the light again. You'll be okay. You will have fun if you're able to make your mindset. You're ready for the roller coaster of it all. You're ready for the ups and downs. You're willing to see misfortunate things as funny because it's like, of course this would happen. And you just have to be able to laugh things off and just soak it all in and have fun with yourself. And that's something that I think everybody needs to learn to be able to do, is just like have fun on your own. Make your own fun. Be cool. Have a good time with yourself. And if you can't be by yourself, if you can't be comfortable with yourself, if you don't think you're fun, I think that's something that you need to work on. And I gotta be honest about that. So the last one that I'm going to go to is it's too expensive or I can't afford it. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's not going to be a big chunk of money. All I'm saying is it doesn't have to be, and it actually can be a lot cheaper than if you were to travel with some other people, because you're only accountable for yourself. You can choose what level of stay you want to have. You can stay in the worst hostel but save so much money, or you can stay in a nicer hostel or a mid-level hostel, or you can stay in hotels or Airbnbs. All I'm saying is that there are cheaper ways to do it, and it was so much less expensive than I imagined it was going to be. Like, to go to Europe for 2 months before I actually went, I would have thought, yeah, as if anyone can afford that. And I didn't really go with a budget that first time because I didn't really know what to expect, but I way over budgeted, and I spent so much less than I intended to. And I didn't even do it on a budget. Like, if I was actually being conscious of it, then it could have been a lot less expensive. And granted, I mean, in the last few years, things have definitely risen in price. Obviously inflation is affecting people worldwide. So that's something to keep track of or think about. But hostels can be, like, depending on where you're going, a hostel can be $5 a night for a bed in a big dorm, or it can be $50 a night if you're, depending on your location. But either way, that's so much less than like a hotel would cost, even if you're splitting it with somebody else. So you do have to be willing to, travel in a different kind of way, but it doesn't have to be expensive. Now, another thing is you don't have to go out for every meal. A lot of hostels will have kitchens. Again, depends on the country. Or if they don't have kitchens, it's usually because eating out is so cheap anyway. I don't know, when I was in Thailand, I would get dinner for literally $1, if that, $1.50, maybe. Like, it just depends where you go. I will say that, like, Europe is going to be way more expensive than if you were to go to, Southeast Asia. And again, that still depends on what country you're going to, what area. If you're a backpacker, you might think certain things are expensive that somebody that has no experience with backpacking would be like, this is dirt cheap. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends on your perspective, but I will say that it doesn't need to be as expensive as you think it's going to be. Yeah. And another thing that I'll say about all of this is that even though I seem like I'm go with the flow and a free spirit, which I totally am, I also do so much research before I go, and that helps really ease my anxieties. It helps me know what to prepare for. It helps me relax more while I'm there, even though I don't have a set itinerary. I don't like to do that because I like to just be able to stay an extra day or go to a country I never thought about, or go to a city I wasn't even planning on going to just because I met some cool people that are going, or someone told me about their experience somewhere and it was awesome. And I really like that openness. That's not for everyone. I also have a close friend that likes to plan out every single day, book everything that they can in advance. That's not me, but I totally understand why that would be somebody. And if you are an anxious person, if you are feeling nervous about things, that could be your way to go. And yeah, so I will say that I do very detailed research about any country, like any country I might want to go to. I do every city I might want to go to, the route I would take, scams and safety things to be aware of, their language, the currency that they use, learning a few things in the local language, knowing how I'm going to get from point A to point B. There's a couple apps I use that I'm happy to share. I probably will share them in a blog post, honestly, pretty soon. But yeah, being well researched is also something that can ease a lot of those concerns about what if I don't have fun. You'll know what would be fun, what you might want to do. It gives you things to be excited about, to get you through, some of those harder days, to be like, Like when I was really, really sick in Thailand, I wanted to go home, but I was like, nope, because I really, really need to go to the sea turtle conservation in Bali in April. So I have to push through. And obviously I'm so glad that I did, and that I trusted my gut. And even though I like really want to go home, but I also really didn't. So I think being well-researched, having things that you're looking forward to in specific places so that you don't leave and be like, oh my God, like I totally did not get the most out of that I could have. Because I've also done trips that I felt like that, where I was like, I was a little bit too, I'll just see where the wind takes me, and not really doing enough research, not really planning enough. So then after I left, I was like, dang, I should have done that while I was there, you know? So I will say that helps ease my anxiety, my nerves, my stress, and any concerns that I have, is knowing that I'm fully prepared. I'm prepared in the safe ways, and I can handle it. So to wrap up, my recommendations are: take the leap, take the risk, and you're responsible for creating a full and beautiful life for yourself, whatever that means to you. If you genuinely don't have the desire for the backpacker life or traveling or being alone, then it's not the best fit, and don't force yourself to. But if it's something you really want to do, or you say, I wish I could do that, then remember that you can. And of course, I would say do your research. I'm all for being flexible, open to the unknown, changing course, seeing where the wind takes you. However, if you're going to be a woman alone in a foreign country where you don't speak the local language, we've got to use our brains. We got to prepare a little bit so that we can relax more when we are there. And bringing up my dad's point of, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you listen to his episode, I feel like I really take that to heart when it comes to my travels. So I'm so happy to talk about this. If anybody is curious or does want to do it, or needs some encouragement, or needs more tips, please DM me on Instagram at Lila by Alexa Jo. I am happy to discuss, send recommendations, send blog posts I've written about it, and just kind of encourage you and share my experiences. Of course, I'm not an expert, but I have done what I've done, so I know what I know. And I'm really happy that you're here and that you're thinking about it, or even just curious about the life of solo travelers and why we might do it and what the point of it is and what the enjoyment is, because it really is one of the best things I've ever done. And I'm so excited to share it with people. And I have had a few friends since I've started Lila that have said okay, I'm going to go on a first solo trip. It'll be a few days, or I'm going to be solo for a few days before my friends meet me, or you encouraged me to do it. And so I'm finally doing it. And that makes me so happy, because I know that it's so enriching and it's going to make your whole life change, and you're going to be so happy that you did it and so proud of yourself, and it can change your life back home too. Yeah, the benefits are endless. So thank you so much for listening and tuning in. I will be back next week with probably a more full-length episode. And yeah, if you have been enjoying the podcast, please go wherever you listen to your podcast, give it a rating, review, share with friends. It really, really helps me out. Go ahead and follow on socials and check out the website, lilabyalexajo.com. Socials is at Lila by Alexa Jo. And join the community. We're so happy to have you here. And that's what I got.